on the Dread Maw base. So what I'm going to do is just build up the base in terms of the ground being broken. So I've actually put this layer of cork on there that's going to be rock, and then there's going to be all these rock bits that I'm going to put around the base so that just build up the sort of effect that it's bashing up through the ground. So I'm going to spray this stuff gray in preparation for the base. Alright, I've decided on this color scheme for my Dread Maw. Incubi Darkness on the skin and the Fang for the scales. I love Incubi Darkness, as you know from painting my Death Army, and I think Fang is a nice kind of gray purple that's going to give it a little bit of color, but not too much color. So, you know, this thing burrows underground. I don't think it can be yellow or red or something like that, but I didn't want it to be just black or boring like that. So I've got the Incubi Darkness and I've got the Fang. So far I've painted on the Incubi Darkness on the skin, and I think it looks pretty good. It needs one more coat, but it's got that sort of dark greeny, sort of earthy color. I really like Incubi Darkness. And then the Fang, I think we'll just give it that right amount of counterpoint. Keep it dark, but not too dark. And then some nice highlights, because these scales are so detailed on this model. I think it's going to look good. Alright, progress on the Dread Worm. The Incubi Darkness is down, and it's been shaded with Coolea green shade. That's how Duncan pronounces it, Coolea. So here it is, and that is looking really nice and dark and earthy green, so that's really nice. I'm liking that. And the Coolea green shade is really good. It gets into all the little ridges and stuff that has been sculpted into the resin. If you look here, like, you can see, maybe it's a little bit too reflective right now, but you can see all the skin of the sculpt is so detailed, so it really brings out all those little lines, which is great when it comes to highlighting. So that looks fine. That looks awesome. And then I also painted the inside of the mouth is going to be dark purple, and so I did that. And then this one on this side too, and the membranes on the side of the mouth are going to be sort of purpley reddish. So that's looking good. So while I had the opportunity and I had the Nuln oil out, I also put a wash of Nuln oil on the rocks in the base, because that's what it's going to need eventually. So right now I'm going to let this stuff dry and carry on. Alright, so work along the Dread Maw is coming along. After the Incubi Darkness and the Coolea green shade, then came a light dry brush of Cybright green. Hang on. No, Cybright green is the brighter one. Cabalite green. Okay, so Cabalite green to brighten it up a little bit. And then a very light dry brush just on the scales and on the edges here where the where you see like the corrugated edge here. That is with Cybright green, and around the nose. So that looks good. You can see here. You can see here on the body piece, there's been some dry brushing and some edge highlighting with the Cybright green as well. Tracing out these little blood vessels, and I'm just using the Cabalite green to catch these sort of ridges that run up and down, so that when it's assembled like that, it's not completely flat. It's going to highlight where the light hits naturally. Same here. So other than picking out these vessels, I've run the medium bright green, so not the super bright Cybright green, but the Cabalite green along these raised ridge along there, and then also in these skin creases here, it's been the same treatment, Cabalite, and then edge highlighted with Cybright. And again, running some Cabalite green along there, so when this is all put together, this bit's going to stick out and catch the light. It's going to look nice. So that looks great. So I'm actually done the skin now. So I'm actually going to do the scales, and then we'll be most of the way done this model already. Alright, the Fang is on. I just need to go over it again one more time. But there's the base color and there's the green, so I think it looks pretty cool. Here's the head. I think that's gonna look pretty cool. So you just need to add another coat there. And then I also dry brushed these two base pieces here with Terminata stone, which I think looks great on top of gray. Gives it a real dark and stark highlight, so I really like that. So we're just going to put another layer of the fang on here to make it nice and solid. Then we're going to wash and highlight. Alright, shading is done on the scales and the horns. The horns are just Agrax, emphasizing the bottom. The scales I shaded with Null Oil, trying to get it, shade everything, but specifically get it really into the grooves between the scales. So you see here, so I have these with a lot of Null Oil just in the grooves between the scales there, and I've got them resting so that everything flows downwards into those grooves. Well, you know, other than those bits, but in this piece here. So I think that's going to look pretty good when it's dry, and then I'll be able to dry brush that and edge highlight that, and I think it'll look pretty cool. Alright, work continues on the Dread Maw. What I've done is to make the contrast between the inner sort of top part of the scales and the highlighted part, which so far has just been base dry brushed with rust gray. I've feathered in some more Null Oil on the sort of bottom half or bottom third of each scale. So you see this darker area. That's another thin feathered in irregularly area of Null Oil to give it more contrast. You see there. Here's another piece. Maybe it doesn't show that well on camera, but it looks pretty good. And then here on this top piece here. So it looks pretty good. You can see how it's darker towards where it overlaps with the next one down. And then I've already started edge highlighting with Fenrisian Gray. This is the second level of highlights. It's going down on the tips of each scale there, to the left of each scale, so the top, and then the ridge that runs down the middle of them. And these ones are really small, so that's all I did. The ridge down the middle and the left-sided edge. But on these bigger scales and on these ones, I'm trying to do like Tyranid sort of markings. So you can see edge highlight down the middle ridge, not all the way down to the bottom, but just towards where the shadow area starts. So the edges, and then I'm going to draw lines all along each scale, mimicking these lines that you see here. Trying my best anyway. So it's going to take a while to do all of this. And then what I'm going to do is take an even brighter highlight, maybe white or Althuan Gray, which is pretty white, down just the very tips of each scale as the final highlight. And then the scales will be done. Yeah. Alright, the scales are done. So this total process involved first, as I said before, putting that layer of Null Oil into the bottom of the scales again to darken down the bottom, and then some dry brushing of rust gray, and then some edge highlighting and striations, so kind of drawing lines like this along the sort of chitinous areas of scale, because that's how the model is made. There's lots of ridges in the scales. It's a fantastic model. So that was using Fenrisian Gray, and then this final extra bright highlight just at the edges of the scales and along the tips, the spine of the scales along the top in Althuan Gray. So that's the head. I think the head looks awesome. Here's the body piece here. I'm quite happy with that. I think it's going to look quite striking from a distance. And very much striking compared to the sort of green. I kept it pretty dull, not too many highlights, so I think it's going to look cool. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is the horns. These have been shaded already. So Xandri Dust as a base and Agrax as a shade, trying to pull more Agrax towards the bottom. And then I'm going to highlight that up to the tips using the usual sort of Ushabti and white. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, I messed up the highlighting on the horns really badly, so I ended up repainting the horn that I started on. So that's just drying now, it's the agrax wash. So in the meantime, I highlighted this purple in this sort of membrane between the two jaws, and I started painting the larger teeth, so Ushabti, and then agrax shading, so you know the usual combination, and then I'll highlight that when it's dry. These little tiny mini teeth, I think I'm gonna have to pick them out. I've heard other people say that it's really hard to dry brush them because they're really not that large. I think I'm just gonna have to pick them out, maybe at least the first sort of 4 or 5 ranks, because as you get in there it gets darker. But I think I'm gonna have to pick them out maybe with Screaming Skull or whatever the final highlight color is. I'm not gonna pick them out in multiple colors, that's crazy. So yeah, just waiting for the shading on the teeth to dry there. Alright, continued on the Dread Maw here. Just trying to do these horns. I already redid them once. Now I'm doing the Duncan style, so some striations at the bottom with Ushabti. Don't look too good, but hopefully it'll be covered up. Some thinned out Reichland first layer, then working up to deeper, thicker Reichland, and then onto agrax towards the tip. So we'll see how that turns out. I've touched in all the teeth, so the teeth are done. Especially on the bottom jaw here, so the large teeth were easier. And I just touched a bit of bone onto every single tooth there just to pick them out. Painstaking, well, yes. And then the other thing I did was the eye. First I just kind of reinforced some of the green edge highlights here along the edge of the upper maw and along the nostrils and around the eye itself. And then the eye I painted in yellow with a little black stripe in it to make it look a little bit saurian. So it looks pretty cool. Looks nice. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that layer of red to dry, I've got all these rock bits that are going to go and form part of the base. They've all been based in gray, so I need to shade them all, and it's kind of difficult because some of the pieces are very small. So I think what I'm going to do is throw some Nuln Oil in the bag, and then just shake them around in the Nuln Oil. And then leave it like that. So let's see how that goes. Shake and bake shading. Alright, so for some shake and bake shading, I've got my trusty Forgeworld bag here. Appropriate since I'm painting Forgeworld. Hopefully I'm not going to use up too much Nuln Oil doing this, but whatever. Just going to pour some Nuln Oil in here. That should be enough, I think. So I've got some Nuln Oil now at the bottom of this bag. Gonna drop my pieces in. Otherwise, I think I would spend more Nuln Oil shading my fingers than shading these pieces. Alright, now I'm gonna seal this bag. And shake and bake. I'm sure many of you viewers have had shake and bake chicken before. So this is like shake and bake but with Nuln Oil and cork parts. Oh, there must be a hole in the bag somewhere because it's coming out, but that's okay. It's still pretty clean. Okay, let's agitate it a little bit more. Alright, let's see how that went. Pretty good. I don't know if you can see down there, but those pieces look like they're pretty nicely shaded. Yeah, there you go. Shake and bake shading with Null Oil. Alright, I'm going to try and fish these out now and keep going forwards. So indeed, the pieces are nicely shaded all over with Null Oil. What a great technique. That's what you use your old Forgeworld bags for. Cool, we'll keep going. So eventually what's going to happen with the base, so I've got the sort of foundations of the base here. This kind of base covered in cork. And then the model base itself, it's going to sit like this. Alright, like this. And then I'm going to be putting all these bits of rock sort of up on top of this base to make it look more like the ground has been exploded up by this Dread Maw popping out of the ground there. And that should also hide this seam, basically. And then what I'm going to do is flock with grass the rest of the base that's showing, and then put a little bit of flock going up the base a little bit, kind of like it was grass there that's been pushed out. Just light bits of flock. And I think that'll look pretty good. Pure Reichland down now, darkening down a little bit more, waiting for that to dry. I've started assembling now, so I put the two body parts of the worm together with my usual putty and super glue mix, and looks pretty good. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's hard to see the join there. There's a join there, but it's on the bottom of the model, so it's fine. Looks great. And started work on the base. So I had to sort of re-glue the cork down, and I've attached one side of the base down and dry brushed the cork, so now it kind of blends in a little bit better than it did before. Just waiting for that to set. Of course, I have to glue the Dread Maw in before I can put in the other side of the base. So the other side of the base is still sitting over here. So that's fine. So we'll just go on and finish this head then, and then we'll finish assembling the Dread Maw. Alright, progress on the Dread Maw here. So the tips are getting darker and darker. Eventually I'm going to dry brush some black right at the very tips of these horns, and this head looks pretty good, I gotta say. I'm very impressed with myself on my job on this head. And then these bits of rocks have been dry brushed now, along with most of my fingers, so that's good. And the base is coming along, so this has been stuck on now, this piece. There's been rocks put around all the irregular edges of the outside, and so that's looking pretty good. And then it's going to go all together once those horns are done. It's looking great. Alright, so the horns are done, I think, so not too bad. Ended up putting some black right at the tips, so not too bad. There we go. So the Dread Maw is done, actually, I believe. Looks pretty good. I'm going to put it all together and get back to you. Alright, here it is, and it looks awesome assembled. So, stuck the bottom on the jaw, glued it all together, all fit together perfectly as my experience of Forgeworld is, and then stuck it onto the front there, and then locked it in place with the second part of the base, and that looks fantastic. Super happy with this model. And the base is in progress still, so I'm going to build up the layers of rocks in and around this to kind of hide this line a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little bit of flock here and there to sort of symbolize kind of the greenery that's been broken up. And then it will truly be done, but it looks great. Even as it is right now, it looks great, but it would look better with some more work on the base. Alright, so I don't know if you can tell them apart now, but there's bits of cork rock here stuck all around to kind of hide that join between the model base and the cork base. For the most part successful, maybe just small areas where you can still see the line, but certainly not what draws your attention. So lined it all the way around with bits of cork base, those little bits that you saw me making, and yeah, it looks pretty good. Fairly happy with that. It certainly makes it look like the eruption of this thing from the ground is much more of a disruption than the base that it comes with. So you can see the base that comes with underlying there. I didn't cover that skeleton there, but now it looks like it's really crashed up from the ground because there's a lot more broken ground around it. And then I'm going to sprinkle some grass around these areas here at the bottom that are still exposed, and then maybe a little bit of grass in places up around there, or maybe I'll just use tufts, and then it would be done. Actually, maybe I'll just use tufts because they're not so green. They're kind of grayish, make it look more like dead grass. So I think that's going to be what I do to finish this base off. Done. I am done my final monster, the Dread Maw. What a crazy cool model. So I finished it off by adding in tufts all over the base. I don't know, I must use the 30-something tufts just to fill in the gaps to hide the join between the Dread Maw base and this bigger base. And then also just to add a little bit of flavor to the base there. So I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm super happy with the paint job on this guy. Very, very awesome. I'm especially happy with the head and how the head turned out, with the scales at the top and the eyes. There we go. Very cool. All right, so that's the it. So next I'll have to work on a Thunder Tusk or two, and then a whole bunch of goblins, and then my Monster Mash list will be ready to go. And there it is, my Forgeworld Bonanza, Age of Sigmar style, my Magma Dragon, Colossal Squig, and Dread Maw. Finished. 3 fantastic models from Forgeworld. Really, really fun to do all 3 of these guys. Spent a lot of time, basically spent the last 5 or 6 weeks doing these 3 guys, and super happy with how they all turned out. And hopefully you're going to see these guys on a table soon, once I got the rest of the army figured out.